All right, everyone, welcome. Thanks again for joining us for a session on Meeting Mondays. Today's session is on hybrid meetings and meeting best practices in a hybrid meeting. So let me start off actually with just a quick question. I'd like to get a sense of how many people have been in a hybrid meeting recently, if they're dominating the types of meetings that you're in, or if you tend to be still meeting remote a lot, or if you're even finding that you're meeting in person more than anything else. So I'm going to pop a poll up in our meeting. Which meeting type do you experience most today? And you can actually check more than one of these if you want to. In person, where we're all together in the same room on site, usually at work. Remote, where everyone is like we are right now, connected in via Teams, Zoom, WebEx, some other platform, or a hybrid, mix of both of those. So I'll just check the box, then click submit. And yeah, so far, that's about kind of what we're seeing is we're still seeing remote dominating and hybrid beginning to sneak in as people are returning to work or doing more and more. So yeah, they're getting close to there. Okay, thanks. So that was my first polling question. I just kind of want to get a sense of kind of what people are coming from. On the aka.ms/meeting Mondays link, there is underneath this week's session, and I'll bring this up in a little bit, there's a really interesting article from Microsoft Work Lab, which is our R&D division around how people experience modern work. And we actually have it's kind of an interesting read. We kind of break down some of the thought we put into what a hybrid meeting technology should look like as we're designing things like the Teams client or Teams room. And I love this quote by one of our chief scientists. The risk of hybrid meetings is that in-person attendees become anonymous faces, right? We just see that little circle. It's talking out into the void. Remote attendees are speaking into that void. They don't know if anyone's hearing them or picking up, and they don't know how to jump in or take a turn. The way I always think about this too is we often orient the conversation on hybrid meetings around technology. Like, hey, how do I get this room into a bridge of some type? And there's all kinds of solutions from all kinds of vendors. I find it's about 20% technology, about 80% soft skills to ensure meeting success focused on inclusivity. One of the biggest challenges with hybrid meetings is making sure that everyone's at parity so they have a chance to contribute and be heard. The two common things that tend to show up is for everyone in the room, you can sometimes feel like you're not able to contribute or be heard, even though you're in the room, like it feels like you would be. But often in any physical room layout, whether it's a Teams meeting room or a more traditional conference room, there's usually a control somewhere, a speakerphone or a console that connects to the projector. And the person sitting closest to that becomes the de facto moderator and proctor for the room. Right? So you're on the old school speakerphone on dial-in and you're muted and you're at the under the table and you're saying, Don, take me off mute. I have a question. And if Don isn't on his game, that opportunity's lost and I don't have as much control as Don does. Flip side, on the remote side, if I'm a remote attendee, I think we've all been in that situation where at one point or another, you're one of a few people on the phone and the meeting is going on in the room around you. You can kind of hear sometimes, kind of not, and they kind of forget that you're there. And then at like minute 58 of the meeting, someone goes, oh, Nick's online. Hey, any questions from anybody on the phone? Okay, thanks for coming today. So avoiding both of those experiences of keeping either person remote or in person not at parity is kind of the goal of designing a good hybrid meetings experience. So that's an example of just a couple challenges. Let me drop out one more poll. I'd like to get your thoughts. What are a couple of challenges that you've seen just already in the last year in the hybrid meeting experience where I've got some people remote, some people in person, they're not quite at parity with each other? Has anyone else experienced this? Just if you got an answer, type it in and click submit. We'll see it pop up here in the word cloud in a second. And again, these are kind of all virtual. Audio, hard to hear. Yeah, audio is the thing that trips us up the most. Audio is one of the senses we get very first when we're born. It's one of the last senses to leave us when we die. And it's one of the ones we're most sensitive to. A 50 millisecond delay, humans can hear that. And so we're tolerable of the screen freezing, but if you hear that digital artifact in your audio clicks, it's really difficult. Let's see, attention span, background sounds, it's a great one. People in the meeting, hard to hear again. Another one for video. Okay, yeah. So a lot of that kind of aligns to sort of that technology side of, hey, what are some things I can do to just ensure the best possible experience in the clients that we're using. I want to share a deck that I was finishing up just now. I'm going to post it up to ak.ms/meeting Mondays in about 10 minutes after we're done. This is a deck that we developed internally at Microsoft that we use just to help orient people in our organization on here's kind of our expectations with how we're going to do hybrid meetings. So I'm going to walk through a couple of pieces of this and then do a couple of demos, and I'm going to share this. So if you'd like to leverage it within your organization, please do. There's a couple of small screenshots in it with links out to the help articles that support these capabilities. If I was delivering this as a training session for sharing it with other users, I would orient around a couple of top tips on making the best out of hybrid meetings that we can, then share some meeting practices, and then finally discuss meeting room technology. So that's how the next like 8 slides are kind of aligned. The challenge of hybrid work is that we're not really going to go back to normal. The hybrid work is here to stay. That's what all of our market research is showing us. And enforcing etiquette that ensures best practices is one of the biggest learning gaps that we have right now to ensure that we're not just focused on technology, but thinking about the experience for people as they're going through it. So these are my top 10 tips for hybrid meetings. I'm going to step through most of these. I'm going to demo a couple, and then we'll come back to them at the end. The first is, if you're in the room, on site in the room, you're one of those attendees, join that online meeting as soon as the first person shows up in the room. The reason is there's a tendency to accidentally start a pre-meeting. Right? I walk in, I see Walt and Sarah, hey guys, how's it going? We kind of start talking. And at 7 minutes past the hour, we say, oh, I guess we should go ahead and join the meeting now. And then we hit the join button or dial in or however we get in. Meanwhile, all those remote participants didn't get a chance to engage on that. We've got a little bit of a leg up on them. It's not inclusive. The second thing is to join from your own device. So if you're in the room, we're going to use the room as the primary set of controls. But there's 2 things I can do if I also bring in my laptop or my phone and join as well. The first is I can join from my laptop, turn on my camera, and then my remote participants can see me on screen instead of seeing me way at the end of a point and zoom camera or a webcam at the other end of the room. The other thing that lets me do is getting back to that problem I mentioned earlier of trying to get Don to respond on my behalf is I could bring in my phone or another device and join, and then I could do things like ask questions or participate in chat or use reactions from my device at parity in the room without being the person who's like sitting stuck at the console. Terry, I love your comment too. You've got remote participants also sitting in the meeting lobby, while we're having that side meeting too. So in our very first Meeting Monday session, if you scroll down to the bottom of the page, I've got a one-pager in a session on large structured meetings where I go into detail on meeting options. Controlling that lobby setting is one of the things that we do. So for the people in the room, we've gotten in the meeting right away. We've brought in our own devices as necessary just so we can participate at equity with the people who are on their laptops remotely or on their computers remotely. The other thing I want to do is if I do join that meeting, I want to make sure I join without audio. And so just as a refresher, what that looks like, let me grab a screenshot of it really here. That's where, if I'm in the room, that very first person, so let's say we're in a Microsoft Teams room or I'm joining and I've got like a hockey puck, a speaker. I'm going to go ahead and say join with computer audio. Then everyone else wants to join and select don't use audio, and that avoids that echo of having 2 devices in the room. I find I often have to reinforce that, and even with my best intentions, at least once a month, this still happens, and I've got to, hey, John, would you please mute? We kind of get that right away. But it ensures that they're in and they're participating, they can see things. I've often seen a best practice of using the raise hand feature remotely when you have a question. I like to enforce that with people remote and in the room. Otherwise, what accidentally happens is we see that nonverbal signal from someone in the room. They're doing this. And you kind of realize, oh, Nick, do you have a question? And it isn't quite fair to the people who are remote who I might not have that high of a fidelity relationship with. So I kind of like, if we're in there and we've joined on our devices, let's all use the raise hand feature just so we're coming up in the same order, so we're all at parity. I also like to have a facilitator, a moderator who's just kind of watching the chat, watching those raised hands to make sure there's space for everyone to speak. If I've got content I want to share besides like the PowerPoint that we're looking at, or even the PowerPoint that we're seeing now, I like to share that in advance. And so the way I do that is when I schedule the meeting, I then open it back up in Teams, I click on the Files tab, and I upload any supporting documents. If there's a link or a Power BI report we're going to need, I drop that into the description or into the meeting chat. The reason is, number one, if I've got remote participants, they may need to look through this in advance, or they may need to be, like if it's a Power BI dashboard, sharing the screen may put the resolution so small that they're not able to see it effectively, especially if they have like people's cameras and things up in the meeting bar at the top. The second is for anyone with neurodiversity needs. Right? If I have trouble reading, if I just process things differently, I might want to review that content using a tool that I use or just at my own pace before the meeting starts, so I'm ready to engage on it. I've got some understanding with it. So I like, as much as possible, I'm not always able to do it, but if we're going through a report, if I'm going to be referring to something, I drop it into the description so people can look at it ahead of time. I'm also trying to avoid people scrambling through posts and emails looking for a reference that we're going to use in the meeting. Let's just put it right in the description or the meeting notes so people can get to it. I'm using PowerPoint Live right now to present. So here I'm going to turn off right now. This is locked. Let me uncheck that button. You should have just seen down at the bottom underneath the slides, underneath the picture of the man on the laptop, some arrows appear, so you can now navigate forward and backward in the deck. I like PowerPoint Live because it makes it really easy to switch from one presenter to another inside of a meeting. And I'll give you a sense of what this looks like once I jump out and do my demo. We do a fuller session on PowerPoint Live and kind of what that looks like in one of the other Meeting Monday sessions. For brainstorming or sharing content, if you can use a digital whiteboard like the Microsoft whiteboard, that's a great way to do that. If you have the opportunity to do that on a device with a Wacom digitizer or touch, like an Apple iPad Pro or a Surface device or a Surface Hub, even better, because all of that digital ink will come across during that experience. But there's also a way to bring analog whiteboards into a meeting, and I'll show you what that looks like. It's kind of one of these really cool, somewhat hidden capabilities that people have kind of missed as we rolled it out over the winter. Then finally, I take notes. I use the built-in meeting notes feature in Teams, or I use OneNote. Today, the meeting notes feature uses a wiki-like capability. I don't like it quite as much as OneNote, and we're actually updating it. So the meeting notes feature this summer is going to update. So if I click up at the top, if I click meeting notes, it pops in a pane that then is synchronized to OneNote and lets multiple people edit at the same time, and also shows up as a pane inside of the meeting. It's just a really nice experience. So with that, any questions so far? And folks, you can just come off mute and yell them out. I'm going to share out my screen while I'm waiting. Yeah, Jenny, it's here. I'll show you what this looks like really quick as I'm getting my screen up. So let me bring in the meeting that we're in. Hopefully this doesn't get too meta. If I click notes, so look what happens on the page. So this is the new experience. This is internal to Microsoft right now, is it now pops up this meeting notes pane, so I can, and we kind of pre-fill in like notes and follow-up tasks. Then it synchronizes this over to OneNote, and then I can start typing and other people can talk about it as well too. So I can put in like, hey, let's talk about the budget. So that's what the new experience will look like once that arrives. Let me take you through a couple of things I just talked about. Let's see what the existing experiences look like. Earlier today, I had a meeting called Contoso Update. So in my Teams calendar, I'm going to click on this and just expand it. And this is the meeting recap. What happens is under details, so this meeting is over, but I recorded it. And I get a couple of components. I get the meeting recording, the meeting transcription. I love this because I actually read faster than I listen. So I can quickly skim and search through and kind of see, here's what was said during that meeting. So if I missed it, I could come back to it and quickly get caught up. I also get any content that was shared in the meeting notes. So this is the old meeting notes experience. You click notes and it actually opens up this tab inside of meeting details. It's accessible there, meeting details. And then this is actually using the Microsoft Teams wiki engine to go through and edit it. So I like OneNote a little bit better. I'm looking forward to that to come. I've also got the attendance so I can see who was in the meeting and how long they were there. So that's a meeting that occurred in the past, and there we just saw a couple of those capabilities. What I always try to do is use that transcription capability, meeting notes, and share files. That way, if people couldn't make it to the meeting, they can still get to all the content. Then here, let's join one. So here I can see I've got a meeting in progress. So here I've got a meeting, I've got my presenter, Megan, and she is delivering her presentation on expanding into Europe using that PowerPoint Live capability. I remember I mentioned earlier, what I like about this is it makes it real easy to switch back and forth as presenters. A second ago, you saw me stop and share my screen, and I even had a little bit of patter to cover over the fact that it takes about 10 seconds for that screen sharing to appear. Well, using PowerPoint Live, what I did is I hit share and then either uploaded a PowerPoint or browsed out to OneDrive and selected one. And that uses PowerPoint Live to render it directly into the meeting. That's what Megan did. She's presenting, but I can click here and take control of the presentation. And when I do that, watch what happens underneath the slide when my presenter controls come in. I'm a presenter in this meeting. I click take control, and then bang, I get the things I need. I can annotate the slide. I was doing this a little bit ago. I can bring up the slide thumbnail view and jump back and forth between them. I can see my speaker notes. I can see what slide is next. And after I'm done with my part, when Megan wants to take back over, so let's say she's going to finish up on that last slide with the graph, I'm clicking on another computer right now that you can't see off screen, but I'm clicking that take control. She gets control back, and I see another user took control. That's a much better way to have parity at hybrid meetings than driving everything from a podium computer in the room that the remote attendees can't access. Because they wind up doing this, hey, could you advance the slide for me thing? And it just really creates a disparity of experiences with my presenters if some are present and some are not. So I like that. It's just a nice way to kind of ensure that all my speakers are at parity. Let me stop for breath and coffee. Any questions, Don or Walt, that I saw you guys answering a couple in chat. Anyone that you want to call out?
No, just that feature that you were kind of showing with the OneNote. They like the ability to do that, but I would just have to mention that it's subject to change before it goes GA.
Yes.
That always happens, right? And then there was a question about, well, not a question, but a statement of, now I got to manage all those notebooks. And as I was kind of mentioning in chat, it's important to know that structure is a little bit different than what we normally see. So wait to see when that feature comes out, becomes preview, then we can test and drive it. But it is a different scenario as far as how those OneNotes are created and where they live. So.
Oh yeah, here, let me show you that. That's a great. So this is preview. It's not NDA, but we may change it. What's happening is just like in meeting recordings now, where I store those in OneDrive and there's a folder that's created for my recordings, there's a meeting notes OneNote archive that gets created that holds your notes and then automatically shares them based on participation in the meeting. So it's using the OneNote engine under the covers, but it's not generating additional artifacts inside of OneDrive or SharePoint Online that you've got to then track. They just are all part of your meeting notes and then still covered by DLP, eDiscovery, and IRM as well too. So we'll watch this space, watch the Microsoft 365 blog. As we get closer to release with that, we'll have admin documentation on administering it. Great question. Yep. Great comment.
And then Joel said something about the ability to be able to do annotations in Teams without having to do it in PowerPoint Live, which is on the roadmap for June.
Yeah. So
thank you, Joel, for throwing that in there. I just saw that last week and I was like, yes, thank you.
As a guy who does a lot of demos and training, like a big missing tool is like a screen annotator, right? Something to like use and draw. You see a lot of Microsoft people use Microsoft Zoom It or Epic Pen or similar tools. So you'll see us do things like go in and draw. We're actually using a tool outside of Teams running in Windows to do that. And so having that integration is going to be nice because it'll be one less moving part. I want to finish with a demo of what I think is just one of the coolest kind of secret features inside of Teams, and it is something called Content Camera. So let's say I want to add a whiteboard to this meeting. Well, the easiest way to do it is go here under Apps, go under Plus, and add the whiteboard. I can also do that before the meeting starts if I go back into my meeting details and expand it. and I can bring in the digital Microsoft whiteboard experience. When I'm doing this, I like to add the whiteboard in the meeting, but then ideally, I work for Microsoft, I will often sign into the whiteboard on a second device. I've got a Microsoft Surface Pro, and then I can draw on it there. I find that's a little bit easier than trying to draw on the monitor or on the on a laptop where the hinge is kind of going back and forth. But this allows me to bring that digital whiteboard in. But what if you don't have that? Or what if you have an analog whiteboard or a wall of Post-it notes or something? You can actually still get those into the meeting. This isn't quite full parity, but it's pretty good for the remote participants. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hit share. And this is how I share content in the meeting like I've been doing. So I can share my screen or a window or the Microsoft whiteboard. What I want to show you is this option right here that says content from camera. What this is going to do is it allows me to take a webcam. Now I can use my main webcam. In this instance, I actually have a second webcam plugged into this computer. And I tell it what type of content I'm going to share. Document is like for a document cam that points down. Think like a university professor doing a lecture in a big lecture hall, drawing on it. Video actually just lets me point the camera somewhere and do a video. Let's say I wanted to do an on-site inspection, or if I'm in education, I want to do a lab experiment, have everybody see it, and I want to have that webcam on a tripod pointing at my content. Here, what I'm going to do is say a whiteboard. And so it says, okay, go ahead and find a nearby whiteboard and point your camera at it. So I'll say, okay, I got that. I'm going to pick the camera that I want. So right now, this is like my main laptop camera that we're seeing. And you'll notice it's kind of trying to figure out, okay, is there anything behind him that's in a square? I'm going to switch to a different camera. And then I'm going to just rotate this and point it at my office wall. Now you'll see what it just said there was, hey, we can't detect any edges. That's because there's nothing on my wall at this point. I'm in my home office. I actually don't have a whiteboard here, but I do have a white piece of paper. So I'm going to stand up and put this in frame. I've got a piece of painter's tape behind it to hold to the wall. So imagine that's my, my actual whiteboard from Office Depot, wherever I got it from. And I'm going to hit this button here that says scan again. So it's going to look a second time. Now it does see the square. It does see the whiteboard. And now I can hit share. And what it's done is it's found that analog whiteboard, automatically cropped it, and it's now sharing it into the meeting just like I would a desktop share or a PowerPoint Live or something else. Now here's what's really cool. I'm going to stand up and walk over there again. I'm going to write on my whiteboard. I'm going to step in front of the camera so you see my shoulder. Let me write onto the whiteboard. As soon as I step away, Teams sees that and grabs it and turns it into digital ink. And if I step back in front of the thing again, it actually keeps the ink in front, even while I continue to work. So we're going to work on our budget. And then fiscal year 23. Let me step back out of the way. And it kind of goes off of that and turns it into digital ink again. It's even color aware. So if I switch pens and draw with my red ink pen, it's going to capture that. So I love this. I've got a couple of folks that swear by their whiteboard or their wall of Post-its or their kind of analog thing that they've got in their on-site war room. They're trying to figure out how to get that into a meeting and get it at parity. Grabbing a second camera. So in this case, the webcam I'm using is it's a Logitech, but you could use just like a $30 inexpensive webcam on a tripod. And using that share from content camera feature, that's a great way to pull analog content and then bring it into the Teams meeting so other people can see it. There's a couple other capabilities here too. I could turn off that presenter overlay. I could take a snapshot that'll grab my whiteboard now, and it drops it into the meeting chat. So there's the actual image coming from it, so I can save it after, and from there I could shove it over anywhere I wanted to into meeting notes or OneNote or any place else. So it's not obviously your best experience is going to be a Microsoft Surface device, but if you don't have one of those, if you've got to go analog, this share from camera, that's a great way to bring that in. Up on the Meeting Mondays page. So right here, I'm gonna put my PowerPoint deck that I'm showing you right now. I'll add that. There's two links that I wanted to call out. One is if you're doing this kind of training internally and you want to give your users some type of a leave behind, we have a much longer guide. It's about 20 pages in length that covers all these capabilities, and it's oriented around the before, during, and after model of running the meeting. And then for each one of the things that is in here, it's got a link out to the help article. So for example, I showed polls earlier. If I've never done a poll in a meeting, I can click on that and it takes me out, shows me how to do it. So that guide to effective meetings, that's a really nice resource. And then if you're just kind of intellectually curious on how we built all this stuff, if you click here where it says design the new hybrid meeting experience, I found this fascinating. It goes through how in Microsoft Research we built out our hybrid meeting work experience. One of the things I'm really excited about that's coming is something called Front Row in Teams, which in a Teams meeting room takes the remote participants' video, pulls them out of it, sort of like a virtual background, and puts them in a row down along the bottom. So if you're in the room with them, it looks exactly the same for everyone else. And we go into detail too on how we kind of like wireframed that experiment, kind of initially built it, and also where it's going. So thanks, Terry, for dropping those links in. So it's just kind of some cool capabilities behind what we're doing. So that is kind of an overview of some best practices for meetings in Teams. Let me jump back over to my PowerPoint. I will flip that out and kick out my screen share. Questions, comments, or thoughts after we ran through all of that?
Yeah, I didn't realize you could just put a piece of paper on the wall. That's insane.
Yeah, all it needs enough contrast to separate from the background, and ideally it needs to be a polygon. You could do a triangle and it actually works. But like if you got purple walls and a blue piece of paper, it's probably not quite enough contrast to see it. But yeah, I have a customer who just lives like, I can't give up my whiteboard. My whole day is on my whiteboard. I'm like, no worries, go get a second webcam and a $6 USB extension cord and point it at the thing, and then everybody's going to be able to see it. All right, let's see. In this deck I'm about to post, so there's that PDF guide. Also in the slide deck, I've got just like very small screenshots of those 10 capabilities, and it's got the details on how to go through it. So like the article here on the content sharing, that's there as well too. And then finally, it's got a couple of pieces just on what is the experience if you have a Teams room. It's got those screenshots that I showed you earlier about how to manage the audio and the view inside of it. The biggest thing is just making sure people are at equity, right? So if I'm in the room remote, if I'm not there, I want to have the same chance to be heard, to contribute, and to present as if I was present. And remember, it can go both ways. We also don't want some person lost in the dark in the back of an auditorium while me in my home office has a more robust experience. So using these best practices will really help get there. All right, after today, if you go to ak.ms/meeting Mondays, I'll post this deck that we're looking at right now. Those other two links are there, and I'll post the recording later this week. And then at the bottom of Meeting Mondays is a link to join our Teams Superheroes community. This is an internal team in the Microsoft tenant that's moderated by a bunch of Microsoft customer success managers like myself. It's a great place to just kind of share best practices. It's focused on adoption and training, so it's not a good spot for technical support, but there are peers there. You can ask questions, see if other people are experiencing things. It's we're just trying to foster a community of like-minded people who are passionate about Microsoft Teams. Otherwise, that is our session on hybrid meeting best practices for Meeting Mondays. We're going to take a break next week. I'm going to drop a question in the Superhero channel later this week to see what topics we should focus on for June, and then we'll publish that list at ak.ms/meeting Mondays after today. Otherwise, everyone, thanks for joining. Have a great week and enjoy the rest of your meetings.